Today we're going to talk about geometric sequences. We've already talked about arithmetic sequences, which are sequences of repeated addition. Today with geometric sequences, the ratio of any term to the previous term is constant. Ratio is another word for fraction. Basically, they're saying if you take the second term and divide it by the first term, you get 3. If you take the third term and divide it by the second term, you also get 3. So they're basically saying, how do you get from 2 to 6? You multiply by 3. From 6 to 18, you multiply by 3. And because you're multiplying by the same number every time, that makes it a geometric sequence. So oh, hey, I forgot to change the word in here, didn't I? I copied and pasted in the notes and made a mistake. So cross out the word arithmetic and write in the word geometric. Geometric sequences are a result of repeated multiplication. In these examples, we need to decide if these sequences are geometric. So, are we multiplying by the same number? From 2 to 6 is times 3, times 3, times 3, and times 3. If you don't know that 54 times 3 is 162, that's fine. That's what we have calculators for. So this one is geometric, and our reasoning is that our common ratio is 3. We use R for the common ratio. D is for arithmetic sequences. R is for geometric sequences. So I want you to pause the video, take a minute, and decide if number 2 and number 3 are geometric sequences or not. Number 2 is no. This looks like it's a +5 pattern. Number 3, I don't know what pattern that is, but 6 to 12 would be times 2. 12 times 2 is definitely not 20, so no, it's not geometric. And our reason is no common ratio. So just like the 8.2 assignment, the first few problems in the 8.3 assignment, is it arithmetic? I think you drag is or is not into the blank. And then for the reasoning, you either say what R is or you say that there's no common ratio. Writing rules for geometric sequences. Here's another formula. A sub n still means the nth term. A sub 1 still means the first term. Here's our R, our common ratio, and it's raised to the n minus 1. So in example 1, our first term is 3. We need to figure out what our common ratio is. How do you get from 3 to 12? Times 4. 12 times 4 is 48, and if we check in our calculator, 48 times 4 is 192. I think you're going to really like geometric sequences because plugging stuff into the formula is a lot easier. Our first term is 3. Our common ratio is 4 raised to the n minus 1. And we're done. Bless you. No distribution, no simplifying. Just drop the numbers into the formula and you're done. And then the part that I forgot on the video yesterday. Find A sub something. They're going to ask you to find some term. In this example, they're asking us to find the 7th term, so we plug in 7. When we plug this into our calculator, it is important that you calculate this part first. So if you do this in one step in your calculator, that's fine. But if I do 3 times 4 raised to the 7 minus 1, on my calculator, once I go up into that exponent, my cursor stays in the exponent. So that 7 minus 1 is in the exponent. The correct answer is 12,288. Oops. On many of your scientific calculators, when you do 3 times 4 raised to the 7 minus 1, the problem with this is that your calculator is going to do 4 to the 7th, then it will multiply by 3, then it will subtract 1. So if this is how you enter it, you need to make sure to put parentheses around the 7 minus 1. Or do that step in your head. If you want to type in 3 times 4 raised to the 6th, perfect, you should get the right answer. So just be careful when you're raising things that you either put parentheses around your entire exponent or do that little bit of math in your head when you're plugging it into your calculator. All right, number 2. Our first term is 36. What is the common ratio? This one's a little interesting. How do you get from 36 to negative 12? We would have to divide, but division is the same as multiplying by a reciprocal. So we're multiplying by a fraction here. So think about, ignore the negatives right now. Let's just think 36 to 12. 36 divided by what would give us 12? 3. Dividing by 3 is the same as multiplying by 1/3. So our common ratio is 1/3. But do you see how it goes positive, negative, positive, negative? That means that we are multiplying by a negative 1/3. A positive number times negative 1/3 will give us negative 12. Negative 12 times a negative number will give us a positive. Positive times a negative will give us a negative, so it just keeps flipping back and forth. So here's the information that we need. If you are struggling to find that R value, take the first 2 terms and do the second term divided by the first term, and then simplify that fraction. That will simplify to negative 1/3 to give you that R value. Okay, actually writing this thing. Our nth term is our first term, 36, times our R, negative 1/3, raised to the n minus 1. I would recommend putting that R in parentheses. In fact, up here, I'm going to suggest parentheses never hurt anyone. Parentheses are our friend. So putting parentheses directly around your R will help to contain that fraction so that your calculator calculates things correctly. Then find a sub 7. So the 7th term in my calculator, I am going to just do that 6, like 7 minus 1 is 6. So 36 parentheses negative 1/3. I just do negative 1 divided by 3 inside the parentheses, raised to the 6th. The correct answer is 0.0494. It should tell you on your assignment how it wants you to round if rounding is necessary. Just like yesterday, we're going to start removing information. So in order to write this rule, remember the rule is a sub n equals our first term times our common ratio raised to the n minus 1. In order to write the rule, you must have your first term and you must have your common ratio. So in this example, we've got the common ratio. We don't have the first term. They are telling us that the 5th term is 54. So just like yesterday, we're going to put the information that we have in and see if we can figure out what that first term is. So I'm going to use 54 as my a sub n. I don't know what my first term is. I know that my common ratio is 3. For the n minus 1, because we use this term 54, that is the 5th term, so I'm going to use a 5 in place of my n. So this term gave us a sub n and that n value. Our common ratio is just our common ratio. Okay, let's do some math. 5 minus 1 is 4, so we can do 3 to the 4th. So grab your calculator. 3 to the 4th is 81. So I've got 54 equals a sub 1 times 81. How do I undo times 81? Divide by 81. And 54 divided by 81 is, does that look like a fraction that we know? What fraction is that? Change it to a fraction if you need to. 2/3. I'm going to use 2/3 because I think it's cleaner than 0.67. So 2/3 is my first term. Now we need to write the rule. Remember, we now know that our first term is 2/3, and we know that our common ratio is 3. A sub n equals our first term times our common ratio raised to the n minus 1. And if you want to put parentheses around the 3, that's fine. If you don't put parentheses around the 3, that's fine. If you want to put parentheses around the 2/3, that's fine. As long as it's not doing extra parentheses that you aren't closing, it should be fine.